Good morning, everybody. My name is Mark Baltzell. I'm the statewide salmon and steelhead manager for the department. Welcome to the next to last day of the PFMC meetings, PFMC 2 through the 2022-23 North Falcon process. With me this morning is Dr. Derek Dabb from our FRAM modeling team and Dr. Kirsten Simonson, our lead Puget Sound recreational bio. We're here to walk through the latest, greatest from the modeling results and bring you up to speed on where we are with fisheries package for this year. Yesterday, as folks who have been following along, it's been a difficult year to get traction and movement on fisheries changes amongst the co-managers. Well, yesterday was movement day. We had quite a few changes to tribal fisheries. That brought into focus some other shaping that needed to happen with some additional fishery shaping late in the day yesterday. I'm going to probably pause here for a second and turn it over to Derek to walk through some of those modeling changes, and then we'll take the conversation from there about additional needs for today. So Derek.
Thanks, Mark. And so where we're at in the modeling, I would say that I'm going to put some model runs on screen in a moment, but these model runs are considered unofficial. Right now, they haven't been incorporated into any of kind of the official PFMC model runs. They're more model runs that are for consideration of fisheries packages, and nothing that I'm going to propose in these model runs is finalized just quite yet. So maybe talking through kind of where we're at with that, the difference between what we're going to be looking at on screen in a second and the official STT package that's out there currently. Some of those changes that we were considering, we talked through yesterday. So maybe to go through the list of those changes and starting with Chinook. For Chinook, we're looking at Area 7 summer modeled as MSF starting July 14th through the 16th with 3-day openers, with additional openers available if quota and impacts are remaining. There will be non-retention for Chinook in Marine Area 7, and that would be for a coho fishery starting August 16th and through September 30th. With kind of the shift of Area 7, we ensured that there is impacts available for a Bellingham Bay fishery, sport fishery, starting August 16th through September 30th. We closed Area 7 winter. We modeled Area 9 very much the same way as Area 7, starting July 14th through the 16th, with additional 3-day openings available if impacts are available. We moved our modeling of Area 8.1. So it's from August 1st, or I'm sorry, Area 8.1 is modeled as non-retention for Chinook and mark selective for coho. And we have that season set as August 1st through October 9th. Area 8.2, which is once again non-retention for Chinook and mark selective for coho, is currently scheduled as August 13th through September 19th. For Area 10 winter, we added back in March. So currently for Area 10 winter, for Chinook, it's modeled as MSF February 1st through March 30th. We had kind of we had an update for Willapa Bay. What was currently represented in our modeling for both sport and net for Willapa Bay was last year's fishery, and we've updated that in the process. We received some updates from winter treaty troll from the tribal side, from 8,500 down to 3,000. We received some updates for Siliguamish CNS in river, as well as kind of additional shaping in the freshwater for Nooksack Springs, both from the tribal side and the state side. We received updated treaty inputs for Skagit in river net, and kind of there's 2 more changes that we've been looking at. One was for the north of Ioc treaty troll, we saw a reduction there, as well as we modified Nisqually in-river freshwater sport to a season that is 5 days in September with closures on Sunday and Monday, as well as a closure from August 30th through September 1st, a 3-day closure kind of in the middle of the season. So I'm sure we'll have a chance for questions on all that part of that package in a second, but for the moment, I'm going to put up the Chinook model runs. So that should be appearing on your screen in just a second. Hopefully folks can see that now. So this is kind of where we're at with our current set of model runs. And from what we've looked at in the past, you see it's of course only one ocean option. We can see that where we're at is considerably improved from yesterday's look. We're now meeting our objectives on Nooksack Springs, on Skagit, on the mid-sound stocks. And I think we're good on Snohomish as well from conversations that I've heard. What you can see that we're still kind of exceeding our objectives on 3 stocks, Siliguamish unmarked, Nisqually, and Skokomish. And for Siliguamish, we're exceeding by 0.7% in the SUS unmarked. For Nisqually, we're exceeding by 0.7 on the total. And for Skokomish, we're exceeding by 3% on the total. For folks who might be interested, we of course are meeting our 38% cap for lower Columbia natural poolies. And maybe with that, before going into coho, maybe I will pause and see if there are any questions.
And it looks like our first hand is from Zachary. Zachary, you can unmute.
So in terms of that 9.7% on the Siliguamish, how does that break down in terms of total Stili mort sharing?
So great question, Zachary. The tribes are still a little bit ahead on that sharing currently, and we are anticipating that, and it's been indicated that the tribes think they have some moves that might help to get us to 9% there.
Okay, that sounds good.
Our next hand is from Shannon. Shannon, go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. So, Derek, tell me in reference to the Nooksack springers. So I see you've got the Lummi and Nooksack are gonna take ceremonial fish there. And then I heard something about you're actually gonna prosecute a sport fishing season on those springers. Is that correct?
That's correct, Shannon. So in recent years, I think it's the past 2 years, we've had a sport fishery for Nooksack Springs, and both Lummi and Nooksack tribes do have ceremonial and CNS fisheries there. So kind of as I was going through the list of changes, and I'd mentioned that there were some in Nooksack River, we saw reductions to what was modeled for all 3 of those fisheries to help us meet our Nooksack Spring objectives.
Okay, so how does that sport fishing scenario work out? Is it monitored? What's the story on that?
I can speak to that, Shannon. It is monitored. We have a pretty intensive monitoring program. We actually shut it down last year in season because we had the indications that we were over our encounters on those fish. So we actually actively manage that with the co-managers in season to ensure that we're staying within those impacts.
Yeah, okay, so enforcement and monitoring is very important on the Nooks, on that early part of that Nooksack, that early run. And the reason I say that is I have drone photographs of people poaching in the holding pool below the South Fork hatchery there. So anyway, enforcement is really, there's a lot of poaching that goes on in the Nooksack. So I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
And I'm not sure, Shannon, if you wanted to speak to it, but I do know that we have our regional bio, Andrew Fowler, on the line now. Andrew, did you have something that you wanted to speak to?
guess Andrew ain't coming on. Anyway, what I could do is I'll forward that photograph. It's moving pictures from a drone that we've been watching. And there is a lot of poaching that goes on. And I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
Looks like Andrew is available. So Andrew, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
All right, my computer's trying to freeze right now. Shannon, Mark covered it pretty well. We do fully monitor that fishery, and it'll look similar to last year, except right now we're gonna plan for it for 2 weeks instead of a month. That way we can keep tabs on where catch is and extend it if we're able to, rather than having to shut down early like we did last couple of years.
Yeah, so, you know, those numbers are critically low, so, and then we gotta, who knows what's gonna happen this summer with the weather, and then, you know, of course, we've got some extremely low flows in the South Fork, and of course, we lost all those fish due to hot water, and so I really question having a sport fishery, especially in the South Fork. Okay, I'll leave it at that. Bye.
Oh, Shannon, it's not in the South Fork. It's only in the North Fork.
Okay, I've got the drone footage of the South Fork poaching going on. I need to send that to the department.
I think that is that the footage that went out last summer.
It might have been, yeah.
Yeah. I think we've all got to see that, but feel free to send it to some more folks in the department too. It's a known hotspot.
Oh, yeah.
And the game wardens are up in the shrubs all the time up there.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. Our next hand is from Pat. Pat, go ahead.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. One is, Derek, you brought up the north of Ayak Treaty troll fishery. We haven't had any discussion in the public forum that I can recall about that fishery. I believe it's a new fishery last year. It was described in the loaf of last year. The concern that I have is the sampling and monitoring of that new fishery, especially being a new fishery with no data to base an estimate of the impact on. It seems like you would want to have a heightened level of sampling and monitoring. But particularly with the concern that has been expressed this year about coho, and in last year's loaf, this is the statement that they had for this fishery. It was that the estimates won't be. I do not know what that noise is. Excuse me, but but it says that it won't. The catch estimates will be made, but it will only be in order to collect data on actual coho interceptions. But we will not be treated as a ceiling, so there's no ceiling on that. And I wonder about the Chinook impacts that are associated with that fishery. But there's nothing mentioned about sampling other than it seems that they're going to be collecting coded wire tag data. What about encounters? What about sublegals? What about marked and unmarked? There's no description of that. This is one of the deficiencies of the process with respect to the public's input on the loaf. I'm just bringing that to your attention. It's a concern that I have. The other question that I have is related to what Zachary brought up in question. He asked Derek about what are the sharing of the tribes and non-Indian of the Siliguamish impacts with that last model run and the unmarked level of 9.7 exceeding the 9% limit. Derek, you said that the tribes are a little bit ahead. What does that mean? Are they exceeding 50% of that 9%? So are they over 4.5%? And where's the non-treaty at? Is it less than 4.5%, or is it more than 4.5%? Thank you.
So Pat, maybe what I'll do is I'll speak to, there's kind of a few things there. I'll speak maybe to the Siliguamish mortalities, and then maybe if I could have Mark's help with some of the north of Ayak troll queries that you had. As we've been with Siliguamish, we've been looking at the total number of mortalities for treaty, non-treaty, and where we're at currently. Give me just 1 second to look that up. Where we're at currently there is that the non-treaty is at approximately 64 and that the treaty is at approximately 71. So we are looking at kind of the continued shaping for Siliguamish. We're expecting that there might be some tribal moves, as I mentioned, kind of in some of the coming runs. Mark,
right, Derek. But I asked where the non-Indian fishery was with respect to the 9%. What the unmarked fish? What level of impact are we at in that model run? Are we exceeding 4.5 or half the 9%, or are we less than that?
If you stand by, it'll take me a few minutes to calculate. Perhaps if I could have Mark start speaking to north of Ayak troll, I should have that to you in just a second, Pat.
You don't need to do it right now, Derek. I'm just really interested in knowing that information. And of course, I know you'll get me a copy of whatever latest model run is available whenever you can. And that's fine with me. I don't want to take up any more time. I just want to lodge those questions about the north of Ayak fishery and the shares that I've been making. So anyway, don't take up any more time right now, Derek, in analyzing and inspecting.
Okay, I'll follow up an email with you, Pat. I'll send you the latest, the unofficial run.
Thanks a lot.
So thanks, Pat, for the questions about the north of Ayak troll fishery. You are correct. That was a new fishery that the co-managers agreed to last year. And there was a lot of discussion and I'll say consternation may be a good word to describe the discussions that we had last year around this fishery. And I would say that was, that we as co-managers had a lot of discussions about what that fishery was or intended to be. The sampling and monitoring, what you alluded to, was a big topic of those discussions. So I think, it being a new fishery like you described and that concern, the point no point tribes did agree to sample and monitor that fishery pretty intensively. Although it may not have been captured in the loaf, we did have those kind of monitoring agreements in place amongst us. So what we learned through that fishery last year was there wasn't a lot of participation or catch from those tribes in attempting to prosecute that fishery last year. Currently, there's a decent sized number in there in the model as a expected catch input. And folks will notice that we're still over that exploitation rate on Skokomish. So those discussions will be ongoing today about the fishery shaping for us to get down on Skokomish. I don't have any insight as to where those discussions may go. Pat, you made an interesting comment there about public perception and public commenting about the loaf. That's never been a part of this that I recall, that, this is an agreement between the co-managers and our public gets to see the results of that. So,
Mark, if I could just clarify a couple of comments there about that. You might recall that I brought up the loaf as in a early meeting north of Falcon here this year, that I thought that was important to have the loaf available like a draft or whatever. And I, you guys get swamped. So I'm not surprised that we didn't spend time with, say, the advisory group to review the LOAF in its draft form and talk. But there are some things in there that I think are important for people to understand, and that's why I call that out. And then the other point that I want to make is I have no problem at all with the Port Gamble, Jamestown, and Lower Elwha tribes conducting a fishery like that. I think that's a really good thing. I think they should be. They've been very restricted in their fishing opportunity in Hood Canal compared to, say, the Siliguamish tribe, and so I support totally that having that fishery. I just think that the comparability of obligations between the state and the tribes in various fisheries conducting sampling or managing in season is something of contrast. That the contrast there is an interest that the public has as to why, kind of a why us but not them sort of thing. And having a description like that, maybe I should have been more specific in the past about what things that I had a concern with, and rather than thinking that we were part of the negotiation of the LOAF. I didn't expect that. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, thanks for that clarity, Pat. And, maybe for other folks on the line who aren't as familiar as you are, there's many fisheries, tribal fisheries that occur that we're right alongside tribal staff sampling their catches and helping and assisting them as co-managers to monitor those fisheries. So, this one's a little bit different, and we're not necessarily right alongside them doing the sampling, but I all the co-managers in the region were pretty explicit about our expectations for monitoring.
And it looks like our next hand is from Tom. Go ahead, Tom.
There we go. Good morning. Thank you for the time. Derek, when you come out with those Stilly numbers, would you please share them with the group?
Can do, Tom.
Thank you. Referring to the update that came out yesterday, specifically with regard to Marine Area 7, the updated proposal season, it stated that the mark selected fishery July 14th through 16 additional openings possible. And then it says right alongside of it, Coho mark select July 14 to 16 additional openings. So those openers will be open concurrently, and then it will be mark selective starting on August 16th.
For Coho, that's correct.
Yeah.
And so initially we talked about August 15th. So did we lose a day there?
I don't know, Tom. I can go back and look at what we put in or.
Okay. So, all right. So we're going to get these openings. And then when there's enough to support a Chinook non-retention season, starting and a Coho retention, starting on August 16th, and it'll run right through September 30th in Area 7. Is that correct?
That's the plan.
Yep.
Okay. Then similarly, in Marine Area 9, the portion that's highlighted in yellow, mark select the 14 through 16, 21 through 23, and then 28 through August 15th. Is that going to run straight through, or is that going to follow the same 3-day regime that we discussed and agreed upon to that point?
So what we're anticipating, Tom, is if there's available quota on the 28th, when we have that opening, we will just open continuously until the Chinook quota is eaten up, or August 15th, whichever comes first. We will be open for Coho, basically continuously for both, continuously for Coho starting that 28th. And that'll run straight through the 25th, I believe, is the newest proposal on the table of September for Coho.
And I have the quota numbers corresponding to the two updated season proposals in 7 and 9, please?
Sure, Tom. So for Area 9, it's 4,700, kind of as we talked about yesterday. That's matching. That's matching the quota that we had last year. Same number. For Area 7, I believe it's modeled at 1,800 right now, which once again, that was a number that was designed to kind of target where we needed to be on Siliguamish, and is a little bit higher than last year. I believe last year was 1,382.
Okay, thank
Our next hand is from Art. Art, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, everyone. Thank you for all you do. I'm looking at that Nisqually number 710 there. Is there flexibility with the tribes? Are we still negotiating that number, or do you anticipate possible adjustments in the non-treaty fishery in all areas, or what?
So with Art, I think with that one, and Derek, correct me if I'm wrong, we did get a modeling input, or we are expecting one from the Nisqually tribe this morning. So we're going to see what that does to that number. I think we have an understanding that if any more additional cuts need to come from our side, that we'll take care of those in the freshwater fishery.
Thank you.
And our next hand is from Carl. Carl, you can unmute.
Thank you. Yeah, so this is all looking pretty positive right now from a recreational, fishery point of view. It's obviously, seasons are shorter than they used to be, but it appears that you guys are right on target, and it's going to get handled, freshwater and or tribal shaping. So just one clarification, a little hard to interpret, but Area 9 in the July 3-day-a-week fishery, that will also be open for coho at that time. Is that correct?
Correct, Carl. On the 3-day openers, we'll be open for coho, but then we're going to be closed for salmon fishing the other 4 days of the week.
Yeah, I understand. And then on the 28th or whatever date it was, somewhere, it's just going to go to a 7-day-a-week fishery. And if there is Chinook quota left, it will continue to be open for Chinook until the trigger to close, at which time it will revert to a coho. Area 9, it'll be a mark selective coho.
Correct.
And Area 10 is non-selective coho.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And Gabe, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Has there been any more discussion with the South Sound tribes on coho? Specifically Puyallup?
No, Gabe, I think we might have mentioned it, but I'll mention it again. We did have a regional meeting with Puyallup and Muckleshoot tribe last week, I believe. We made I felt a really good case for why the state felt we needed to have a mark selective fishery opportunity in the freshwater. We couldn't gain agreement to do that. So we're doing some fishery shaping on our side as a proposal to try to minimize our coho impacts in the river this year.
Will there be any fishery shaping in the marine areas, or is that pretty much off the table?
I felt like we could get the best bang for our buck in the freshwater, and we didn't get any consideration for a mark selective fishery in the freshwater. I don't think there would have been any additional consideration in the marine area.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thank you.
Our next hand is from Glenn. Glenn, go ahead.
Good morning. Hey, Derek, what was the final numbers for Area 5?
They were kind of as they were in past runs. The quota number was around 3,800 for the summertime and around 1,700 for the wintertime. I might look to Jeremiah to see if you could kind of quickly pull those for me while I'm on the line here, and I'll get back to you in just a moment, Glenn. if we want to, unless you had another question, Glenn, if we want to start working on kind of the next hand that we've got raised, Leah, I'll get back in just a minute, Glenn.
Yeah, I have no other question. I just want to know what those numbers are.
Okay, we'll get back to you, Glenn. Our next hand is Kurt. Kurt, go ahead.
I'm trying to, can you hear me now? There, no. There.
Yeah, we can hear you.
A couple questions. The first is the obvious one. What's the non-river or in-river non-treaty fishery for the Siliguamish? What's being modeled?
Currently 25. Kurt.
For the non-treaty.
Oh, for the non-treaty 1.
No, but what's the season? Is it?
Oh, I'm sorry. We've still got 2 fish bottles in there. Actually, a correction. Thank you, Chad.
So Kurt, I believe the season is as it was proposed originally.
But still to be determined. Thank you on that. My understanding is that you're going to have to account for all Chinook impacts in all fisheries at this time. Is that correct, including the Coho fisheries?
That is correct.
And I'm assuming that probably the limiting stock and impacts even within the Coho fisheries are going to be still Siliguamish Chinook.
Depends on the area, Kurt, but yeah, I mean, the heavy hitter.
For the major mixed stock areas, it's probably going to be the Siliguamish Chinooks. What portion of our 4.5% or 63 or 64 fish are we setting aside for Coho impacts?
I'm not sure that we've got that look right here, right now, but we could kind of, Derek could look at it and we could figure that out.
I mean, you obviously set something aside to do that, and you're going to monitor at least some of those fisheries with a Murphy method.
So yeah, Kurt, folks on the line may not know, last year, the state essentially enhanced our recreational monitoring efforts in Coho time periods. So basically those methodologies that we've used for Chinook through the years, we extended all the way through Coho time periods into late October in some areas. So essentially we've committed for the long term to continue that in-season look at all of our recreational fisheries that are happening. Felt like last year it's just an important step that we need to take to be accountable for our fisheries and know what those impacts are in real time.
So in real time, there's always going to be the potential for some in-season adjustments depending on what the encounters are. And given that, this is kind of a new monitoring effort, we can expect the encounters might be something different than what the best information indicates they may be at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean, I've indicated, Kurt, as you stated, we're really looking at a total stilly mortality through the sound, and I think that's the reality of where we're going to need to manage to, at least for the next while.
Then I have 2 more questions. That I guess is we're going to be able to see, like we do on the various Chinook fisheries, what the encounters are real time, with the weekly updates or however frequent they are.
Yes, we will. Ty Garber, our Mark Select Fisheries Bio, who helps produce and disseminate those estimates in season. We've talked about that plan, and yeah, that'll be part of the in-season information that we share.
Yeah, I mean, you got the framework to do that. It looks pretty spiffy to me. So I think it just matter making sure you do that. Then if there's a problem, are you going to deal with it on a marine area by marine area basis? If an area goes over on the Chinook fisheries by 5%, and that adjustment's to be made in that area's Coho fishery?
Again, this is the new paradigm here that we haven't really had to cross or deal with in the past. Is we're really kind of dealing with aggregate management when it comes to how we're looking at the total impact, right? So we're looking at that impact across all the major mixed stock areas that has a greater than, I think, 0.1% impact on stilly. So it's most of them. And so, yeah, we're not only looking at it on the individual marine area, we're looking at it as part of the whole as well.
Yeah, and that was a question whether it's going to be aggregate across the species by marine areas or aggregate by species across all of Puget Sound. It sounds like it's the latter. And the reason I'm asking all these questions, of course, is because of the conservation payback. And if we go over by even a couple tenths of a percent, we realize how tough that is. And what happens in these coho fisheries is going to be maybe significant what happens next year in our planning for the next year's fisheries. Well, thank you. That helps.
Thanks, Kurt. And just to follow up on Glenn's question from earlier, it looks like the exact quota for Area 5 sport in the summertime is going to be is right now modeled as 3890, and it looks like it's modeled in the winter as 1726.
So that went down some fish compared to last year when all the other areas went up in fish, correct?
I would say it went down. I think it was something around 4,000 last year, if I remember correct. It went down for Marine Area 5 in the summertime. It's pretty similar to last year's number. I wouldn't say all the marine areas went up in fish, but some of them did. They bounced around a little bit.
Right. I'm just concerned with that number. We're looking at like a 10-day fishery, maybe 12. Instead of the 6 weeks. I mean, you made comments several times that you use fish that we would need, use the number of fish that we would need to get through a season. And we haven't made it through our Chinook season for the last 2 years. And yet our numbers went down.
Derek, how is that input derived for Area 5? Is it a scalar tied to abundance?
I'd have to check exactly for Marine Area 5. I believe it is the scalar method. So I was looking into that, and I have looked into this issue with Glenn and Brendan as well. I have to say that after kind of looking into it with Glenn and Brandon, I hear their concerns, and there's a chance that this quota might not be able to make it through the full season in Marine Area 5. The reason why this quota might be a little bit lower using that scalar method, and maybe just to highlight what a scalar is when we talk about that, is it's a rate that goes into the modeling and it acts on the abundances within the model to predict and produce a catch. And so for Marine Area 5, I think one of the pieces that's playing in there is the lower Columbia River abundance that we see. The Columbia River fish make up a greater proportion of that catch than we see in a lot of the other marine areas. And so I think that's what's helped to kind of contribute to the number that we're seeing. I get it. It's as with some of our other marine quotas, this is one that is of concern. I think we want to be paying attention to in season, and maybe thinking about as we go into the next year, to buffer or add more to this quota at this point would be very difficult, as this is one of the fisheries that has a greater impact on stilly relative to many of our other marine area fisheries.
And that was one of the reasons I asked yesterday if, when you guys came up with that 50,000 number for Chinook in the ocean, was there going to be any fluctuation in the marine areas, particular Area 5, knowing that number was likely lower than what you originally were thinking it was going to be? And, we were hoping that we'd see a few more fish come in because of that.
Yeah, and Glenn, in the ocean, we really don't see very many stilly impacts. So it would take really, really large changes in the ocean for not very many stilly fish. The other thing, and I want to thank Dan Auerbach, who kind of just brought some information to my attention. Something that I might have misspoke on earlier is that at least in terms of the winter, the Area 5 quota is increased a little bit relative to last year. Last year, that number was about 1,500.
Yeah, right. I mean, the overall number, summer and winter put together, is still down. We just took a bigger hit on the summer, and some of that fish got transferred to the winter because of I'm assuming because of the stilly.
Again, Glenn, I don't think it's a transfer like you're thinking. It's really just a result of the modeling. That's what I was thinking, why I asked the question about the lower Columbia River stocks and that effect. If Area 5 is on a scalar, those lower abundances are going to mean a lower quota. That's just kind of the reality of the modeling.
Right. I just, you know, I just want to put it out there that, you know, we had X amount of fish last year. We had I believe it was a 14-day season or a 3-week season. And we had an X number, which was bigger the year before. And we only had a 4-week season out of the 6.
Well, so this is a great point, Glenn, and maybe a good chance for me to remind folks that make comparisons to last year is really difficult because we're really dealing with a brand new model this year. This is an updated model from what we used for last year's preseason planning. So it's really not going to be an apples to apples comparison for what the model spit out last year.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't realize that. All right, thanks.
Yep.
It looks like Andrew Sullivan had a question in the chat. Andrew, if you'd want to ask your question live, you can do that now.
Hi there. I was just wondering about the Ma10 Coho opportunity in June. I know that we lost 2 weeks last year, and I was wondering if there's any chance those are coming back this year. Those early June resident coho are a fun salmon starting opportunity for rec guys.
Yeah, Andrew, currently and probably not for this year, is that fishery going to come back? One of your compatriots there, Carl Nyman's a big advocate and has been asking for that early June opportunity. You know, folks on this call know that for a long time, that was a June catch and release opportunity for Chinook, really important opportunity. We failed to reach agreement on that catch and release opportunity in the mid 2010s, and really we were able to carve out this directed coho opportunity. The co-managers still express a lot of concern. You know, we opened that fishery and we saw big increases in effort and catch over several years there. So it's obviously you're asking about it, so it's become very popular. We did, as I mentioned, intensify our sampling and monitoring efforts. So that early June time period is one that we also think is important to align with the open fishery in Area 11. So it is something that we talked about with co-managers this year, couldn't get agreement on that early June and 10, but it is definitely one that we continue to try to talk to our co-managers about keeping that one as an early June opportunity. So thanks for that.
Are we scheduled at June 15th then right now?
Yeah, 15th or 16th. I can't remember what's where it lands on the calendar, but.
And is that still 2 unmarked?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Andrew. Our next hand is from Pat. Pat, go ahead.
Well, thanks. And I apologize for earlier, the noise that was interrupting my speech hit my grandkids. You know, they're only 2 and they put toys underneath my desk, and one of them came on while I was talking. I could not find the damn thing.
That's awesome.
Anyway, sorry about that. Hey, I had you had the either Derek or Mark were providing details about the Area 9 fishery, about how it's conducted. I see a positive thing about the Area 7 proposal, the current fishery, as 2 things. One is there's July fishing for Chinook, and it's securing the late fishery this year for coho, last year that was lost for coho and pink. So that looks really positive. But could you explain how that worked? You mentioned that it's opened July 14th through 16th, and 3-day openings continue. Just like, how is it? Does it contrast with the Area 9 approach, or is it? Could you explain that when it shifts to maybe a 7-day-a-week fishery, or when it's coho only? Could you just run through that one more time?
Sure, Pat. So, you know, as you know and have been here, we've talked about trying to align the 7 and 9 fishery openings to help spread the effort, you know, obviously trying to keep as much of an opportunity on the water for as long as we can in place. So the additional openings beyond that first 14th through 16th, knowing what the effort and catches were like in Area 7 last year, I'll be surprised if we have many additional openings in Area 7 beyond the first one. And so I think the difference that I see in terms of the 7 and 9 and why we're thinking differently about 9 and additional openings there is, I think it just has to do with the quota levels and the expected length of how much time we think it's going to take to harvest those fish. The 28th opener at the end of the month, we were already scheduled in Area 9 to go basically Chinook non-selective Chinook non-retention, after August 1. And so that 28th opener there, we just felt like we were only adding an extra day of coho on there that may not have, been part of the 3-day opener Chinook season. So we just decided we had enough non-retention impacts built in to allow that continuous opportunity in 9. Does that answer your question, Pat?
But not quite, Mark. You again explained the 9, but you didn't fully explain the 7. So just tell me how 7 works.
So here's how I'm thinking about Area 7. We're going to run the 3 days. We're going to evaluate it in the 4 days off. If we have additional available Chinook harvest, we'll decide additional opening days, whether that be the Thursday through Saturday. It may not be for those full additional days. So after we're done with the Chinook quota in Area 7, we'll close to salmon fishing until August 15th. I think that's the difference, is we just don't have the available non-retention impacts to continue that fishery after we're done with the directed Chinook part of the fishery. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. That's clear.
Our next hit is from Brandon. Brandon, go ahead.
Hey guys, so I'm going to take Shannon's words and for CQ's purpose, be eternally optimistic that this season we won't be shut down. Do we have to do anything from CQ's point of view to be starting out as a 1 Chinook, 2 salmon, and then see how it goes so that we could hopefully make it the 45-day season?
Yeah, Brandon, great question. And as I was thinking about this, the way we will describe these fisheries in the list of agreed fisheries is a 2 salmon daily limit. But as we've done in the past, I think it makes a lot of sense to circle up with the advisory group and think about what those daily limits are for these seasons. I would be surprised if people are in disagreement that in most of these big areas, 5, 6, 7, 9, that it's going to be a 1 Chinook daily, 2 salmon limit. But I'd be happy to hear if there's differing opinions there. But that's how I'm thinking about it, Brandon, is just trying to maximize that. And if we've got the ability to raise it to 2, we did that in the winter fishery in 10 this year, right at the end. So I think we'd have that ability to do that as well.
Okay, and then with what went on with our blackmouth season, Glenn and myself haven't really talked about it, but that might be something too. We'd possibly want to start off 1 Chinook as well, since there's only going to be a couple areas fishing, because we really need the days on the water.
Well, as always, Brandon, we're happy to work with you and the rest of the advisors to craft, the best available packages there. So if you have thoughts, please send them to Kirsten and I, and we'll get them in.
Sounds good.
Our next hand is from Carl. Carl, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yes. So I was listening about the methodology for, the accounting of Chinook during the coho fishery, as you get, once the Chinook retention closes, And, you know, it just, I'm sure you guys must have some kind of adjustment in the model for the amount of Chinook that you encounter during a coho fishery would be less than during a Chinook fishery, for two reasons. One thing, people are targeting coho, and the other reason would be that the Chinook tend to move into the estuaries and lower rivers, and you just plain have fewer Chinook around to encounter. So I that was just kind of a question to explain to me or us how that Chinook, the number of Chinook encounters may drop during the coho fishery, and how the model is set up to account for that.
I can take this one, Carl. So how it works is there's kind of two components to it, and you actually very well referenced what the two components are themselves in the modeling. Which one is that in many of our areas we are looking at kind of the differential of Chinook catch and encounters across months. So as you referenced, some months are more likely to encounter Chinook, and some months are less likely to. That varies area by area. But that is something that we're accounting for in the modeling. The other piece that we're accounting for is we recognize that people target coho differently, and that there could also be differential effort in periods where there is coho fishing versus Chinook fishing. And so we have kind of adjustment factors on some of our encounter rates for Chinook during coho directed seasons. Yeah, I think that's what we do in the modeling.
And so as you continue, I noticed that you guys are beginning to do more monitoring on the coho fisheries and perhaps test fishing as well. So that I would hope that you'll continue to be able to use that data to fine tune your encounters of Chinook during the coho fisheries. And I wanted to thank the staff for all of their work, and pretty impressive the amount of modeling and policy decisions and work that has happened in the last 24 hours. Hopefully you guys got some sleep.
Very little, Carl. And thank you for that. So folks will see up on screen before, sorry if there's another question and I'm hopping in, but up on the screen, we hadn't really walked through coho very much. So just allow me to do that really quickly. The season changes. We, again, just working with the co-managers a little bit, there was a number of moves we made that addressed a number of different things, but we shortened up the 8-2 plan season by a few days. We shortened up the Area 9 plan season by a few days. And then we also, we were pretty bold in a proposal for adding October back into 8-1. I think I indicated yesterday that caused quite a different opinion that I was expecting from that proposal, I guess is a nice way to put it. So we were able to add on an extra 9 days in 8-1 for some coho opportunity there in October. So I don't think there's any other major coho things that changed other than those three things from the last model run. And I know there was a request. Go ahead, Derek.
Yeah, there were just a few other minor changes. I just want to say that those changes in Area 8 and 9 were coupled with some changes on the treaty side as well from the Tulalip tribe. And then also, although kind of maybe more of a minor thing, there were also some small changes to 7.7A net.
Thanks, Derek.
And it looks like our next hand is from Alex. Alex, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Mark, you indicated that your feelings are that in Marine Area 7, we will not go beyond that first weekend opener. What can you just kind of go into that a little bit and why you believe that to be the case?
Just based on last year, really, Alex. I know it's different. It's later in the month, which we know the Chinook catches drop off as the month goes through July. We know it's not a holiday weekend, July 4th. I just, I'm thinking we've heard from a lot of people, there's a lot of pent up demand to go Chinook fishing in the San Juan. So I'm trying to be cautious and maybe not elevate people's expectations too much.
Right.
I'm concerned that there's going to be a high demand, even with opening Area 9 on that same day. There's going to be a high demand for people fishing in the San Juan.
Well, so when that feeling of that we're gonna reach that quota goal in 3 days, and I'm sorry if I keep going back to this over our several calls, but would that not be an indication of a strong presence of hatchery fish in the area during that time?
But again, Alex, we have no way of updating abundances of all Puget Sound Chinook stocks swimming through Area 7 in that time of year. I mean, we're talking about how many Chinook stocks that mix in and around Area 7, and that includes Canadian stocks. We just have no way of assessing what abundances are higher or lower in season.
Thank you, Alex. Our next hand is from Shannon. Shannon, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks again. So I'd like to go back out to Nia Bay and talk about the Ma10 trollers. Now, did I hear that there was an adjustment made out there on the Chinook fishery, Derek?
That's correct, Shannon. We did have an input change there.
Okay, so it went from 9,000 some down to 3,000?
8,500 to 3,000.
Okay, so then looking back at their past catch records, if you ever get a hold of those, is the 3,000 more realistic than the 9,000 number?
The 3,000 is more realistic than the 9,000 number.
Yeah, so you're modeling on 3,000, not 9,000.
Correct.
Okay, so we've been saying, the commercial guys have been saying that for years, that they don't really take that amount of fish, and to model that high number impacts all the fisheries inside. So, and that's a summer fishery, correct?
Winter.
A winter troll. Okay, so then they do have a summer troll too, right? Correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so that number that we're seeing there takes in both fisheries, winter season and summer. No? Yes.
The 8,500 number was from the winter troll fishery.
Okay. All right. All right. So I guess you've got that into a more realistic number to work with. I just want to go back one more time to the North Fork on the Nooksack River during that proposed 2-week fishery there. What's the encounter rate of wilds in that 2-week fishery?
I could look up what that is in the modeling if you give me just a moment, Shannon. But what I do know is what's currently modeled in there is that there's 20 wild encounters available. There are, of course, on that system, especially in the North Fork, where there's the Kendall hatchery program. There's a much greater number of hatchery fish than wild. But if you'd like, I can look that up and get back to you on the ratio, the expected ratio of hatchery to wild.
Yeah, maybe later. So the way I understand the fishery in river with the treaty guys go, when they encounter 3 wilds in their tangle nets, they shut the fishery down. So that's, until the following week. So I think they're trying hard not to impact the wild fish in their ceremonial, and they're using a tangle net procedure. So they don't gill, if you understand me. So that's what I know about that fishery there. So yeah, you could come on later if you wanted to, and just give me a number on that macaw stuff. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Shannon.
And it looks like Keith Robbins had a question in the chat. Keith, go ahead and ask your question live.
I'm just checking to see what the update is on the sport chum fishery and find out if There will be one during the commercial fishery this year.
So Keith, I don't know if you're specifically speaking about Area 10.
Yes, Area 10, 9, 11, whatever, wherever the commercials are fishing.
So the canal will be open, and Area 10 is going to be open through October, but not during chum timing. And then I do not believe we're planning on closing recreational chum fishing in South Sound this year.
Is there a commercial chum fishery in Area 10 in November?
There is not currently one planned.
If one gets planned, will there be a parallel sport fishery attached to it? Let me rephrase that. I would hope that you would include a sport fishery if there is a commercial chum fishery in November in Area 10.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And our next question in the chat was from Mark Riedesel. If you can, wow, you can unmute yourself now. Sorry about that.
Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
I was just going to ask if you guys were going to do test fishing in Area 7 during those Chinook openers. I know that didn't sound like it didn't happen last year with the limited quota and stuff. I was wondering if you were going to do that some before and during those 3-day openers to get a little better accurate count on what we're catching.
Thanks so much for the question, Mark. And I'm sorry, Kirsten, if I interrupted you. Yes, we are. In fact, thanks for that question, because it allows me to plug. If anybody's interested in test fishing for the department, we have a number of test fishing positions open. So you can go check the website and put your name in the hat if that's something you're interested in. Yep, we have recruitments out there now, like I just said. The plan is to bring those folks on board in late May. So we get them trained up and on the water in June. So the intention is that they're going to be fishing hopefully starting in mid to late June and just be on the water through the summer.
Okay, thanks. So what's the backup plan if you can't fill those positions? Are you going to reach out to local anglers and see if they want to do it?
You'll be the first person I call.
Great news. Thanks, Mark.
And our next hand is from Norm. Norm, go ahead.
Hi, folks. First, thank you all for your hard work. I know you've been up all night. I know it's tough. And the questions keep getting tougher from the recreational public. So obviously, you know, I hope that's obvious. Is there going to be a Siliguamish River Chinook fishery? That's the first question. The second question, I guess I was asleep last year. Last year was a tough year for me. So I think I missed it. But is that north of Ayoc co-manager fishery a Chinook fishery? If so, will that opportunity also be afforded to the recreational community north of Ayoc for Chinook? I know it won't happen this year, but something to put in a plug in for future years. And then the last thing, well, not the last thing, I may have more later, a follow on about the chum fishery in Area 10. It seems like we can be very nimble in adjusting seasons to open commercial opportunities. However, we seem to be lagging in having that same nimbleness for opening recreational opportunities in parallel. Why is that?
Several questions there, Norm. Let me see if I can tick them off in order. Currently, we still do not have agreement to fish on the Siliguamish River, so there are no planned opportunities on the Siliguamish this year. The troll fishery is a new fishery last year, like we talked about earlier, but also as part of what we have agreed to do with the co-managers around Mid-Hood Canal in the new resource management plan. we made an agreement through the life of that plan or until we had a different pathway forward with NOAA Fisheries about Mid-Hood Canal, that we would not consider any directed Chinook opportunities in that north part of the canal. On the third part of your question, the nimbleness and the inability to do that has to do with Chinook impacts, Norm. If we plan those Chinook impacts in the commercial fisheries pre-season, anticipating that we may have openers, we have not done that with a potential chum opener in Area 10 because of Chinook impacts. And currently, you know, that's not in the modeling or consideration for this year.
Thank you.
Our next hand is from Tom. Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, Mark, I just want to touch back on this Area 7 test fishing info. I think it's an absolute priority if you're serious about an outreach or getting the word out. I, for one, would put my hand up and help do that. I'd even lend my boat to the effort in June. You know, if we break this thing down, I don't think I share your pessimism with regard to grinding up what would be over 900 fish in 3 days in Area 7. That's you know, neither here nor there. But I think we should keep in touch on this, and when you guys have a bit of time, I would definitely like to help out with the outreach and make sure the test fishing happens in Marine Area 7 and in Area 9 for that matter. So not really a question, just you know, an extent offer to help with this effort.
Very much appreciate that, Tom. Thank you.
And I did see that Dr. Simonson, for those who might be interested in the chat, did put a link to some of the openings available for our sampling opportunities.
Yeah, we're planning on doing a lot of promoting this week, starting this week. We'll be promoting those widely. So anybody that you can think of that might be interested to send them our way.
And our next hand is from Shannon. Shannon, go ahead.
How about now?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. This question's to Mark, I guess. We had that meeting last night at 5. But was there any update on the agreed to trigger number for a fishery at Apple Cove Point? You got any update on that?
We did have some discussion yesterday. In fact, Shannon, I guess this is a good place to daylight anything. We did not come to an agreement yet on a trigger. And late last night, we received a proposal from South Sound Tribes that allows for some really limited effort, limited catch, or early week opportunity in 42 and 43. So we were actually going to engage the commercial advisors later this morning on this and potentially try to pull a call together later today to discuss it. We don't quite have a direct path of where we want to go here, but it is important to us. And Dr. Aga, who's been kind of leading that effort, has put 6 or 7 different options in front of me this morning that we should consider. So it's on our radar, and stay tuned to your email. We'll be in touch through today about that issue.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys working on that. Otherwise, we'll probably go back to the original trigger, which would be 480 or 460, somewhere in there. Yeah, so and the reason I got a call from Fred Marinkovich at the start of this meeting, and I said, I don't know, Fred, we'll know later. Thanks.
Yeah, Shannon, I mean, just so folks are aware, I know most of the folks on this call are recreational centered, but last year was a really great, well, I won't say great, but I thought it was a really good step forward for the co-managers when it comes to chum management. We were able to agree on a singular trigger in-season abundance or estimated run size that triggered all fisheries. So the whole idea there was that when there was enough fish, we all went fishing. And I think for the department, that was really important. And that's why we want to make sure that if the tribes are trying to carve out some early season opportunity, that we're at least allowed to dip our toe into that time period as well. So.
All right, I'll stay tuned on my email here. Thanks.
Thanks, Shannon.
And our next hand is from Alex. Alex, go ahead.
In regards to the Area 5 winter season, it was cited that we exceeded our preseason catch forecast, our predicted catch rates. Is that exceedance being considered in this year's forecasted catch rate? Are we adjusting what we expect anglers to catch out there? If it's a calendar set season and we're determining it based off of catch forecasts, are those forecasts being adjusted to accommodate what appears to be a bountiful fishery?
So I didn't quite catch all your question, Alex, but I mean, I think, the modeling adjusts for the expected abundance. Our catch expectations are built into how we model and think about what levels are needed to prosecute fisheries. So, we're considering all those things and using recent years' data as much as we can to inform both the modeling and the decision making.
So is the success of this past season that caused for early closure, is that specifically being used to alter this coming year's expected catch rate?
Well, I mean, I think what it does is it altered our approach as to how we think about offering that opportunity. That exceedance we offered the opportunity as a catch and an expected season, and we got with our pants down, frankly. So we're essentially trying to manage that with the proposed season and coupled with the available catch for this year. I guess I feel like maybe I'm not answering your question, but I'm trying to understand what you're trying to get at.
Well, I mean, you are, but it's also I just want to maybe get some clarity on how our modeling is affected when we look at previous years' success rates and catch rates versus what we forecasted that we were going to be able to catch, and if that data is directly used to alter the following seasons.
Maybe I'll jump in here, Mark, real quick.
Go ahead.
Okay. So Alex, what I think you're trying to get at is whether or not recreational CPUE, recreational catch per effort, is related to the next year's abundance. And we don't have any information that correlates those two things. So if you're talking about angler success in a fishery, we don't have information that indicates that is directly correlated to fisheries abundance. As you can imagine, recreational fishing is a pretty biased sample of the population as a whole. So the information that you're looking to get out of recreational fisheries it's really, really difficult to do. We would have to develop kind of a fishery independent method of sampling that total population of what's happening out there. And recreational fisheries are not going to get at that. So yeah, we can look at things and say, yeah, the fishing was good this year. It might be an indication of this, that, and the other thing, but we don't have really hard evidence that indicates that successful recreational fishing in one area at one time point is a direct correlation to evidence of increase in abundance or our forecasts not being what we thought they were going to be. That's just, we just don't have the information to get at that. I think that, if we change the way that we were doing some of our sampling and our test fishing, and if we had year-round test fishing where we were sampling out of season and we had more information, then we might start to get at that, coupled with some of this more fisheries independent methodology. But that's not something that we're doing right now. We just don't have that information. So I hope that clarifies it a little bit. We cannot correlate angler success to population abundance size.
Thank you, Kirsten.
And it looks like that's our, oh, and Norm has his hand back up. Norm, you're good to go.
Yeah, here it comes.
Norm, you might be on two different devices that's picking up maybe the background noise. You can unmute again when you're ready.
Try that.
It's still pretty echoey.
I thought I closed that. How about now?
Perfect.
How about now?
You sound great.
Okay. And this is going to sound bad, I know. But here we go. Again, thank you all for your hard work. I want to go back to the Stilly and the conversations that we were talking about, how we're looking now today more as an aggregate throughout all marine areas in determining managing that Siliguamish population. And I believe I heard a figure of any area that contributes more than 1/10 of a fish being looked at to make a contribution in that effort. Later on, I heard some questions about the ocean fishery. Does the ocean fisheries contribute more than 1/10 of a point to the Siliguamish problem?
I'd have to look at that and get back to you.
Are
Norm.
they being, or is that methodology being restricted to just the marine areas within Puget Sound? In terms of 1/10 of a fish kind of thing? I can't hear you.
So sorry, Norm, you kind of caught us here without a direct answer to your question.
Try again, I'm sorry. I couldn't hear you.
So I think I'm getting it. Can you hear me, Norm?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. So you caught us kind of without a good answer to your question. My remembrance from the language in the plan that we agreed to was that it was all fisheries, both or it's Puget Sound. Thanks, Chad. It's Puget Sound and freshwater and marine fisheries for both treaty and non-treaty. So it doesn't include the ocean.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Because I would think that if that included the ocean, it could put a significant challenge to the fisheries that are so it's vital to those folks out there. So that's why I asked the question. I kind of panicked there for a moment. Thank you.
We did too, because we didn't know how to answer your question.
Sorry.
Okay, and our next hand is from Brandon. Brandon, go ahead.
Hey guys, so I just want to throw this out there again. I know you guys hear from me on this all the time. Hopefully you guys really was able to look at some wild coho fishing on the strait just to get some of these guys off the water towards the back half of September. It's just tough sitting in CQ, and it seems like we get punished from the ocean and punished from Puget Sound, and we can never get back to that level playing ground. But yeah, it would sure be nice to someday see wild coho fishing back in the straits. Thank you.
And Brandon, I do think that we had kind of a few requests throughout this process to model this one. I see that we have Angelica Hagenbrow in list of attendees, and she had helped with us modeling this scenario. I'd invite Angelica and see if she's willing to kind of speak to what she saw in the modeling.
Derek, can you repeat the question for me, please?
Yep, Brandon was asking about wild coho in marine area in the straits, and any modeling that you might have done to look at the impacts of that and how it affected our model this year.
You're talking about area 5-6 modeling?
Correct.
So in terms of which stocks would be impacted in those areas?
Yeah, by a non-selective fishery.
By a non, oh yes, okay. Changing that non-selectively, we looked at that, and adding, for example, a little bit of time in September would have been very, very costly. The catches that were modeled out for non-selective fishery, the mark rates weren't great. I think they ended up to be like 40% or something like that in the model. And because of that, the catches that we had to put in to convert a fishery from a mark selective to a non-selective resulted in a very high catch quota, as well as really high impacts on all the stocks that we were worried about. Hood Canal, for example. Of course, JDF is a stock we were concerned about, as well as Thompson. So a costly fishery for sure.
I'm sorry to catch you off guard, but thank you so much for that, Angelica.
No trouble.
Okay, and that looks like our last hand for right now.
Thanks, Leah. Really appreciate everybody being here this morning. So I want to make sure folks are clear. There's still a little bit of work to do on the Siliguamish exploitation rate. There's still quite a bit over on that. And so there's some conversations that need to be had with both Siliguamish and the Hood Canal co-managers around how we're going to get down to that exploitation rate limit on Siliguamish for this year. There may be some additional shaping to come. So we're somewhat limited there in what the state has the ability to do to affect that exploitation rate. So we're hoping for some productive conversation there between the co-managers, and our goal is obviously not to do anything, but if we do need to make some contributions, it'll likely be a lower quota in area 6 will be one of the things that will be on our radar there. So just wanted to make folks aware of that. We think that's likely the last issue that we'll have to solve to meet our exploitation rate objectives for this year. So we will be in touch throughout the day. We will get modeling results up on the web as soon as we have them available. We will have any proposed fishery changes up on the web for folks to look at as well. We will be back here tomorrow morning to close out this PFMC meeting with final results and talking through next steps with folks. So thanks again, everybody, for being here. Really appreciate everybody's time and efforts, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.